Hi, and welcome again to the CDFM study group. My name is Helen Thomas, and today I'm going to be covering CDFM Module 4, that's the acquisition piece of the exam, but I'm specifically going to be looking at Section 5, Human Systems Integration. And as you can see, the HSI accounts for 5% of the CDFM Module 4 exam. So what this aspect of it is, now that we have the system, we need to look at what requirement or what skills, knowledge is necessary for the individual that's operating that system. So human system integration concept involves those human elements of the engineering process. The HSI summarize, so you have a summary in the acquisition strategy and the systems engineering plan. So when you begin that material solution analysis in the beginning of the acquisition phase and you come up with the technology development strategy and the acquisition strategy, that's what we're talking about here, you'll have it summarized in the systems engineering plan and the acquisition strategy. And as you see here, it's talking about the total systems approach. You're not only looking at how do we develop that brand new aircraft, how are we going to operate it? And also later, you're going to also look at how you're going to maintain it, because it's not just buying that item one time and that's the only cost involved. So you have to look at the total systems approach process. So personnel domain is telling you now what they need to have. The targeted audience to work on these type of system identifies how they need to think, the cognitive, physical, and sensory abilities. What knowledge, skills, and abilities do these personnel who work on this system need to have? Capabilities and limitations of the operators, maintainers, the supporters, and support personnel that are expected to be in place at the time the system is fielded. So you can't wait until the system is fielded to figure out now who's going to be the subject matter expert on this system out in the field, who's going to operate it, who's going to sustain it. Training, you're going to have consistent training. What type of training? If you're going to train the individual on that system, are we going to use training in classroom? Are we going to use simulators? Or you're going to actually put them on the equipment to do the training. So that's your training domain. Some safety considerations that you have to figure out what safety consideration do you have. So you can consider this doing your risk assessment, because once you identify the safety hazard, then you need to minimize the potential. So you figure out what you need to do to minimize the instances where that safety issue will come into play. Habitability domain. Are those factors necessary to sustain morale, safety, health? So all inclusive things that you need to do once you train the individual. Personnel domain, training domain, and then the area going to have them where you also maintain your morale, safety, health of the individual users of that equipment. So the DOD instruction 5000.2, it talks about the operation of the acquisition process requirement, says that the program manager must have human factors engineering and design it in such a way that it requires minimal manpower, the least amount of people necessary to operate that equipment. So again, your program manager is your subject matter expert on that system. So they'll be able to figure out what's the minimal amount of personnel necessary to be able to successfully operate and safely operate that system. The HSI should be a key consideration during the formation of those program planning teams, IPTs, integrated planning teams. Human factors engineers should be included as members of, so you should have representative that's thinking on the human perspective as you're going through the engineering development of that system. What are the domains of human system integration? And we got to make sure we know a little bit of. So we talked about personnel, training, and habitability domains. All right, manpower. Manpower talks about the job tasks, operations and maintenance rates, workload. You want to know how many hours, man hours is going to take, what type of workload they're going to have, what are shortfalls, critical constraints or restraints, and meeting the end strength. Because again, you typically don't get all the personnel that you want to do the job. So what constraints do you have in your manpower? Personnel, we talked about again, knowledge, skills, and abilities and experience level needed to do the job. Do we have individuals already in our inventory, or do we have to train them? Training is a learning process by which personnel individually acquires that knowledge, skills, and abilities. Human factors engineering. The program manager employs those human factors. Again, this is a repetitive of this, but it's the way how it was in the study, guys. So I pulled it out again, because usually when you see things being repeated that many times, that means it's important. So human factors engineering, minimal manpower. We're going back to, so we make sure they have the right amount of training, and we minimize safety hazards. Conditions in and around the system, that the operational context within the system will be operated and supported. So this again talks about the safety, making sure you put the safety, identify the safety hazard, put corrective actions in place to minimize the instances of those becoming an issue. Survivability, features that reduce the risk of fratricide detection and the probability of being attached. So personnel survivability, making sure that we don't harm our own people. So we have to put those safety measures in place. What else we have here? Program managers should use the elements of human systems integration to design and develop systems that effectively and affordably integrates with human capabilities and limitation. So when while they're developing the system, you have to consider the human aspect, who's going to operate it. It is what they need to do within their capabilities and limitations as a human being, not even knowledge, skills, and ability as a human. So the key to a successful HSI, and let's fix this, SI strategy is integration. Highlight that. So to satisfy the requirements in DoD instructions, DoD instruction 5000.02, the program manager should have a plan for HSI, and I still didn't get it right here, human systems engineering, in place prior to entering milestone B. So prior to milestone B, which it makes sense, because before we actually go full-fledged, remember milestone B was the point where we initiate the acquisition system. When you get a successful milestone B and successful go ahead from the milestone decision authority to go into the engineering and manufacturing development stage, you should already know how you're going to operate. Once you develop the system, what type of requirements does that human aspect need to have, and how you're going to operate the system. So as it states, you should have your plan for the HSI prior to entering milestone B at the engineering and manufacturing development. So this is section number 5 of module 4 of the CDFM, and this is the acquisition piece. And I'll see you guys again next time.